Can you hear me? Ooh, that's loud. That is really loud. I'm kind of loud anyway, and I don't even know that I need a microphone. You can't sit way back there. You've got to sit up front, Marie. You're trying to hide back there. Okay, so here's the deal. And for those that are tuned in on the YouTube channel, here's what's happening. We are preparing for the start at 11 o'clock, and if you're watching this, you have found the YouTube link. I did post that, and we will be having a little bit of informal discussion about the children and the process to this point. We have Chairman Yankton here, and I know that we have had discussion with Oliver Gord in Spirit Lake. I also have a new friend and genealogist, a member of the Wahpeton family that will be coming as well, and she can kind of speak to the history of the Wahpeton family. We have spoken with the Laframboise family as well, and whether or not people can make it, I know that there are many people that are tuning in for this, and we can go from there. So right now, this is just as we're getting people together for this to begin at 11. We are here at the Sisseton-Wahpeton College Auditorium. And for right now, for the next half hour, I just want to talk a little bit about the work that has gone into this from my office's end. The discussion on Carlisle and the cemetery there was brought to us as Tribal Archives and Historic Preservation from the Rosebud relatives and the Rosebud Youth Council. And the Rosebud Youth Council were really instrumental in this after their visit, and some of their statements, their story about it, I believe is online. But what I want to share is a little bit about the individuals, the boys. There were 6 children, 2 girls, that left from the Sisseton Agency in 1879. And we'll share after 11 some of the resources for those that would like to do some research themselves and look at some of the school records and things that are available online. I know there are some Facebook groups, the descendants of Carlisle Boarding School and others that also have some great information. But for us, in looking through the student information and then looking specifically at the cemetery, typically when this subject comes up, people ask me about their relatives and people that attended there. There are many relatives, many Dakota and other tribes that attended over the years. And there are lists related to each tribe and those that had attended Carlisle. What we're working with today is the cemetery and the families that want to return their children home. So those that attended at Carlisle, that can be a different discussion at a later time, or somebody that wants additional information and see what's available for their relative, you can look at the website for that. But the children that left from here in 1879, the first child to die there at Carlisle is Amos Laframboise, the way that I understand this. Amos Laframboise, and is that the card for him? Okay. Amos Laframboise, the date of his death, he arrives at the school on November 6, 1879, with the 6 children that went with Agent Chrissy, and he dies on November 26, 1879. So it always kind of struck me that he was only there 20 days. And looking at boarding schools in this time era, we're dealing with a lot of that information right now. Of course, there are a lot of things to consider. Illness, number one. There were many of these children probably hadn't been exposed to some of the things that they encountered, and being in tight dormitories and close proximity to each other from other places. I'm sure that is a large part of it. Not getting into the details of his death, other than the notation that he was sick, is 20 days at Carlisle before he dies. And the information that I have seen, and there are some great books on this. One of them that I found was given to me by Vine Marks. Vine Marks is my personal historian, and let's see. This one is Carlisle Indian Industrial School by Jacqueline Fear Siegel and Susan D. Rose. I don't know if you can see that in there, but this one is a really good book with the information that we have. And there is also the Indian Industrial School by Linda Whitmer. And then for those that want to research things like sports there, and there are other books too. This is the photo that I'm looking for. And we had used this photo, maybe we can pull it up, but it is on the flyer. The flyer and the return of our Sisseton-Wahpeton Children, Amos Laframboise, son of Joseph Laframboise. I wonder if there's some other way to find a citation for that. But the children that are shown in this picture, the two girls are in this photo. She's identified as Emily Laframboise. I've also seen her noted as Emily Justine Laframboise. And Justine Laframboise is somebody that, and this gets into where it's very personal for us. Justine Laframboise is somebody that I've seen noted in our tribal history, our tribal records, and even some of the elders. Some time back, talking with Mr. Francis Crawford, he was 100 years old, and he and his sister-in-law, we had a big discussion on life back in those days, and he shared a story about Justine Laframboise. So I've always known that she was somebody that had attended Carlisle, was very educated, and did a lot of things with the tribe. But so she is pictured in this, and then the other girl is Nancy Renville. And both of those two girls, I believe, came back to the reservation, and I don't know the further details of their lives at this time. But the three boys in this picture, I think it's very clear that in this photo, the children are, there it is, yeah, great. That the three boys, Amos is not pictured here because obviously he's passed on within those first 20 days. The three boys are George Walker, John Renville in the center, and Edward Upright. Does it identify them in that? As Edward Upright standing on the right side, John Renville in the center. And on the in the database, there are other photos of John Renville. But Now, the three boys that are there, Amos the Framboys, of course, dies first after 20 days. He is buried initially into Ashland County, Cumberland County, and the cemetery there. And I don't have this worked into a time frame that I can share, but I'm just going to be really brief on this, that the discussion from the local townsfolk was, and this is, the era where these things were very common, the objection to having an Indian buried in their public cemetery. So because the local objection, they used the documents in their land grant to enforce that only white people could be buried there. So he was then disinterred and then moved to another location on the Carlisle campus. So Amos at that point then is buried there, and then of course subject to the rest of the history related to Carlisle and then the cemetery now. The next to die, I believe, is John Renville. Are you able to pull him up? Individually, yes. And I'll tell you what I found about John Renville. And this goes back, of course, those that know me know I'm such a big history nerd. I've been looking at a lot of this stuff in various ways, whether it be through family genealogies or whatever it might be, for a number of years. And some years back, I came across a newspaper article. And in the newspaper article, it talked about the death of John Renville at Carlisle. So I used that, shared it out on Facebook, and we were discussing the details in that newspaper article. And what it said was, it said that John Renville had passed away. His father, Chief Gabriel Renville, was coming to get him. And the person that wrote the article said that I have seen nothing more sad than a child dying so far away from their loved ones, their friends, and their home. And it was really sad, but part of the mission at that point was looking at the Renville family. So seeing that with John Renville and that he had died, I was aware of that he had died at Carlisle. Obviously, Gabriel Renville was somebody that had the resources to go and get his son and bring his son home. What I found later in researching, I found a written statement within the Carlisle newspaper that talked about what happened with John Renville. And I apologize that I don't have the exact date of this. It talked about how they had gone out on a trip to camp. They were going to a camp. And just a side note that I thought was kind of funny, there were other boys from other tribes that were attending and going on this trip to this camp. And when they get to this camp, these other boys from this other tribe, they decide that they're not going to go. They turn around and they go back. And so when the people at the school